after months, so many silent, endless months, my children actually knocked on my door. It was a sound I hadn't heard in ages, a sudden, sharp rap that broke the quiet of my little apartment. I opened it, my heart doing a silly little flutter, a tiny, foolish hope rising, even after everything they'd done. But it wasn't for an apology. Oh no, not at all. It wasn't for them to say sorry for taking me from my own home, the home I built, the one I poured my life into, and just leaving me here, in this tiny, strange place. No. They stood on my doorstep, an invitation held out, almost like a shield. It was an invitation to my granddaughter Chloe's wedding. My sweet Chloe, growing up so fast. Seeing that elegant card in their hands, it hit me. They weren't here because they missed me. They weren't here because they felt any shred of guilt for the way they'd pushed me out. David, my son, stood there, his face as unreadable as ever. And Sarah, my daughter, just behind him, her eyes distant, polite, but cold. The same emotional coldness I'd grown used to over these lonely months. But something was different this time. Beneath the usual coolness, there was a tiny glimmer, a flicker of something that looked a lot like need. They needed me, not out of love, not out of any real desire for my presence. It was plain as day. They needed me to complete their perfect scene, to fill a chair at the party they were planning, a prop for their grand event. They probably wanted the whole family picture to look just right for the guests, for everyone to see that happy, perfect family we never truly were. The silent humiliation was almost deafening in that small hallway. David spoke first, his voice smooth, practiced. He said the ceremony would be in the most beautiful place they knew, a place that would bring good memories to all the guests. He said it with such confidence, such a casual air, as if he truly believed it. He talked about how special the location was, how much history it held for our family. Little did they know, as those words left his lips, they were handing me the key. A key to turn the tables, to change everything. They were so busy planning their perfect day, they completely forgot about the woman they had discarded like an old, worn-out object. But that woman held a secret. A very tired, yet very determined smile touched my lips, a smile that held all the knowledge they lacked, all the history they'd chosen. Their big dream wedding party, it all depended on me, on the very person they had treated with such disrespect, with such emotional distance. The irony was almost too much to bear. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the expensive paper of the invitation. It felt heavy, not with joy, but with the weight of all the unspoken things between us. I looked from David to Sarah, their faces expectant, waiting for my immediate answer. They wanted me to say yes, to fall in line, to pretend everything was fine. They wanted my presence to keep up appearances, to make sure no one whispered about the happy family that wasn't. They had humiliated me in my own home, the place where I had poured my heart and soul for decades. And now they stood there wanting to return to that very place as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't stripped me of my dignity and my life there. I held the invitation tighter. They didn't imagine, not for a second, that this piece of paper, this seemingly innocent request, wasn't the beginning of my return to their world. Oh no, this was something entirely different. This was the beginning of the end of their whole charade, and they had absolutely no idea. They had absolutely no idea. They stood there on my doorstep, so sure of themselves, so certain they held all the cards. They just saw an old woman, quiet and defeated. But they forgot who Eleanor was. They forgot who I truly was, underneath all the tears and the pain they had caused. My name is Eleanor. I'm 76 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my hands were never still. My whole life, people knew me as a woman with full hands, full of work, always stitching, always creating, full of food for the family, for neighbors, for anyone who walked through my door needing a warm meal, and full of affection, always ready with a hug or a comforting word for anyone who needed it. That's just who I was. That's who I always tried to be. I was a seamstress, you see. For over 40 years, I sat at my machine, day in and day out, the rhythmic hum of the needle a constant in my life. Each stitch was a tiny act of creation, a little bit of me poured into the fabric. And with my late husband Arthur, we built our life. We built our home. It wasn't fancy, not at all. Just a simple country home, nestled among the trees, surrounded by open fields, but it was full of love, full of the vibrant green of our garden, the rustle of leaves, the quiet comfort that only a place you've built with your own two hands can give. Arthur, my dear Arthur, he was the heart of that place with me. He always said that home, that land, was my safe haven, mine and no one else's. I remember him, his hands calloused from work, looking out at the sunset over our fields, turning to me with a soft smile. Eleanor, he'd say, his voice deep and gentle, take care of this land, because it will take care of you. Those words, they were a whisper in my mind, even now. He told me that before he left us, before he passed on, leaving a silence that took years to get used to. I raised my two children there, David and Sarah. My son, David, and my daughter, Sarah. Every sacrifice I made, every extra hour I worked at my sewing machine, every penny I saved, it was all for them. They never lacked anything, not a single thing. I made sure of that. The country home, that simple house, it wasn't just walls and a roof. It was the stage for all our memories. Birthday parties that spilled out into the garden, Sunday lunches that lasted for hours with laughter and good food. I remember my grandchildren's first steps on that very porch, tiny wobbly legs taking their first hesitant strides. For me, every tree we planted, every wall Arthur helped erect, every single nail hammered into place, it all held the sweat of our labor. But more than that, it held the sound of their laughter, the echoes of a family growing up together. I honestly thought, deep in my heart, that they saw the same thing I did. That they saw a home, a sanctuary, a place built on love and hard work. After Arthur left, it was just me, and I kept taking care of everything, just like he asked. The chickens in the yard, clucking contentedly, provided fresh eggs every morning. The garden, my beautiful, bountiful garden, fed not just me, but the entire neighborhood with its fresh vegetables and herbs. I handled the repairs around the house, learning how to fix a leaky faucet or patch a roof tile. My children, David and Sarah, they'd visit sometimes, usually on Sundays, and they'd say I worked too hard. They'd tell me to slow down, to rest. But the truth is, they barely showed up to help with any of it. It was always just me, tending to the legacy Arthur and I built. I had a special place for all the house documents, all the important papers. A small wooden box Arthur had made for me years ago, a beautiful, simple thing he carved himself. It sat tucked away in a secret spot, a place only I knew about. Inside that box, among other things, was the proof of Arthur's last wish, a promise he made to me, carefully written down, officially documented. And I, in my innocence, in my trusting heart, never once thought I would ever need to use that promise, not against anyone, and certainly not against my own children. But they forgot who Eleanor was. They forgot who I truly was, underneath all the tears and the pain they had caused. Everything began to change so subtly, you could almost miss it. At first, it was just a little shift, a tiny tremor in the ground beneath my feet. Those regular Sunday visits, the ones where David and Sarah, my children, would come over for lunch and we'd share stories, those started to dwindle. They became quick phone calls. And then, those calls, they turned into even shorter messages, often just a text, a quick hello, a hurried reply. The easy, comfortable rhythm of our family life, it just slowly, quietly faded away. David, my eldest son, he started talking differently. He'd mention, almost casually, how big the country home was for me, how it was too much work for a lady my age. He'd say it was dangerous, living all by myself in such a remote place. His voice would be soft, almost caring, but there was a strange edge to his words. And then Sarah, my daughter, she'd jump in and agree. She'd say I deserved to rest, that I needed a smaller, more practical place. In the city, she'd add, where everything was convenient. I listened, my heart feeling a little heavier each time they brought it up. I started to feel a coldness, a distance that hadn't been there before. Not between us, but coming from them. When they looked at my house, the home Arthur and I built, the home I loved so fiercely, their eyes didn't hold affection anymore. There was no warmth, no memory, just calculation. They'd talk about the land's value, about the possibilities of modernizing the space, modernizing my home. The words felt foreign and harsh in my ears. I'd try to change the subject, just like any mother would. I'd talk about the new flowers blooming in the garden, a vibrant burst of color I was so proud of. Or I'd mention a new recipe I learned, something delicious I wanted to cook for them. But their eyes, they were just so distant. It was like they weren't even hearing me, like I wasn't really there. The pain, it started to settle in my chest, a dull, aching throb. a feeling that I was becoming invisible within my own world. Then one day, without any warning, they showed up. David and Sarah, my children, and with them a stranger, a man in a crisp suit, carrying a folder and a measuring tape. A real estate agent, they said. Just to appraise, they explained, their voices light, almost innocent. For your own good, Mom, Sarah added, stepping past me into the living room. To plan for the future, David chimed in, already gesturing towards the windows. I didn't give them permission, not really, but they just insisted. It was for my own good, they kept repeating. To plan for the future. My future, apparently, was something they were now in charge of. I stood there, feeling like an intruder on my own porch. A stranger walked through my rooms, measuring the spaces that held 50 years of my history, 50 years of laughter and tears and quiet moments with Arthur. He wrote things down on his clipboard, his presence making the familiar feel alien. David and Sarah followed him, pointing things out, talking in hushed tones. They didn't want my opinion. They didn't ask what I wanted. They just wanted my signature. It was like I was a piece of furniture, something to be moved, something to be valued and then discarded. That afternoon, as the strange man finally left, and my children started making plans for dinner as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened, I finally understood. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about my well-being, or my safety, or my peace. They weren't concerned with me at all. They were only concerned with what I possessed. My home, my land, everything Arthur and I had built together. The realization hit me like a cold wave, chilling me to the bone, and I knew deep down that this was only the beginning. The beginning arrived. It arrived on a Sunday, a day that should have been bathed in sunshine, a day meant for quiet reflection or family warmth. But for me, that Sunday turned irrevocably gray. A chilling, heavy gray that settled over everything, muffling the world. David and Sarah, my own children, called me for what they termed a serious talk. They said it with such formality, such a lack of warmth. And I knew instantly that whatever it was, it wouldn't be good. They wanted to have this talk right there, in the living room of my country home, the very heart of the house Arthur and I had built together. The place filled with so many happy memories that were now being twisted into something unrecognizable. They didn't give me time to react, not really. They just started talking, their words flowing with a practiced ease that suggested this had all been decided long ago, without any input from me. They said they had already, in the city center, they added, almost as an afterthought. And then, the blow that truly landed. The move would be the very next week. Just like that. A week. Sarah spoke, her voice calm, almost detached. "It's for your own good, Mom," she said, her eyes fixed on some distant point over my shoulder. Anywhere but meeting mine. No more hard work for you. The words were meant to sound comforting, I suppose, but they felt like stones in my ears. They spoke to me as if I were a child, a very old child, incapable. He said they would take care of the country home from now on. He used words like manage and family asset. He spoke of it as if it were a business, a thing, not the home of my heart. At that precise moment, sitting in the worn armchair Arthur had given me so many years ago, I realized I was no longer their mother in their eyes. I wasn't the owner of this house, the woman who had nurtured it for decades. I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle, something to be removed. Quietly and efficiently, I just sat there. I stayed silent, my hands resting on the fabric of Arthur's armchair. The pain was so vast, so overwhelming, that it simply paralyzed me. I couldn't speak, couldn't protest, couldn't even cry. I just watched them. Their faces were calm, almost serene, as they rearranged my entire existence. There was no yelling, no raised voices, no bitter fight, no slamming doors. The violence, the real, soul-crashing violence, was in the calm, in the utterly organized, almost polite way they were excluding me from my own life, from my own home. My keys, the heavy bunch I always kept on the small table beside the door, were lying there. David reached out and took them. Just picked them up. "We'll keep these, Mom," he said, his voice smooth, "to make things easier." Easier for whom? Not for me. In that afternoon, in my very own home, the place where every creak of the floorboards, every scratch on the paint, held a memory, they tore from me not only a roof over my head, they tore away my dignity, my autonomy. I was being evicted by my own children, in complete silence, with forced smiles on their faces, smiles that were more chilling than any scream could have been. I left there with just one small suitcase, a suitcase that held only a fraction of my clothes, a few personal items, 50 years of history, of laughter and tears, of hard work and quiet joy, of shared dreams with Arthur, all left behind. I walked past the kitchen where I'd cooked countless meals, past the window where I'd watched so many sunrises, past the back door that led straight to my garden, my beautiful, thriving garden. I couldn't even say goodbye to it. Not a final touch to the leaves, not a last look at the blossoms. Just a quick walk out, leaving it all behind. That garden, my sanctuary, now felt like a stranger's property. The quiet of the apartment they took me to would be deafening. The quiet of the apartment they took me to was truly deafening. It wasn't just the absence of sound, but the heavy, empty silence that pressed in from all sides. A silence where my own thoughts echoed too loudly. A constant reminder of how alone I was, how discarded I felt. This tiny space, impersonal and cold, felt nothing like a home. Sadness, a deep, bone-weary sadness, could have easily consumed me right there, swallowed me whole. I could have just let go, let the tears come and never stop. But then, amidst that crushing quiet, something else started to echo in my mind. Not a sound from the apartment, but a voice, a whisper from long ago. Arthur's voice. My dear husband Arthur, telling me, "Eleanor, take care of this land, because it will take care of you." His words, so simple, so full of love, broke through the despair. They didn't just remind me of him. They reminded me of a promise made to me, and a promise I had made to him. I didn't cry from anger then. I didn't cry from despair. Not really. Instead, I took a deep, shuddering breath, filling my lungs with the stale air of this new, unwelcome place. My mind, which had been so numb, suddenly cleared. And then I remembered. The wooden box, the one Arthur had made, the one that held all our important papers, all our history. That box, by some instinct, some premonition I can't explain, I had taken it with me. It was tucked away safely in my small suitcase. They had been so focused on getting me out, on taking the house, they hadn't even noticed. Not a single one of them. That's when I knew. I knew that greed had completely blinded them, David and Sarah. They were so busy calculating, so busy seeing dollar signs where I saw memories, that they had forgotten the crucial details. They forgot a document. Just one piece of paper, really. But that piece of paper, it changed everything. They thought the country home, our home, was just a divided inheritance, something they had an acquired right to, something that would be theirs after, well, after I was gone, I suppose. They never bothered to read the papers, not really. They never bothered to understand the history, the true history, behind that place. They just looked at the market value, their arrogance, their absolute certainty that they had won, that they had outsmarted the old woman. That arrogance would be my greatest ally, and it would be their downfall. I decided right then and there, I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't call them. I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't argue. Not a word. Silence would be my weapon. They expected a fight, tears, pleas. They expected me to be angry, to call them every day, to beg. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I would become still. I spent the following days in seclusion. I didn't venture out much, not into this strange city. I just watched time pass by the window, the world outside moving on, indifferent. I observed. I listened. I thought. My mind, usually so busy with the garden and the house, was now fully focused. I knew it was only a matter of time, a matter of days, weeks, maybe months, but the time would come. The time when they would need something, something only I could give, something only I possessed. They thought they had won. They truly believed that the old mother had been put in her place, safely tucked away and out of sight. But I was not a victim. Not anymore. I was a guardian. I was the keeper of Arthur's legacy, the protector of our home. And I was just waiting for the right moment, the perfect moment to show them who really held the power in this strange, cruel game they thought they were winning. My silence wasn't weakness, it was calm. It was the deep, unmoving calm of someone who knows exactly what the next move on the chessboard will be. And I had all the time in the world to wait for it. My silence wasn't weakness, it was calm. It was the deep, unmoving calm of someone who knows exactly what the next move on the chessboard will be. And I had all the time in the world to wait for it. Weeks turned into months. They stretched out, one after another, each day a quiet repetition of the last. No phone calls from David or Sarah, no visits, not a single word. It was as if I had simply ceased to exist for them. They had put me here, in this small apartment, and then they had just forgotten me. The silence from them was a weight, heavier than any words could have been. It spoke volumes about how little I truly meant to them, now that they had what they wanted. Then, word started to trickle in from an old neighbor, dear Mrs. Henderson, who still knew how to find me. She'd call sometimes, her voice a comfort in the vast emptiness of my days. She told me the country home was celebrating. Not for me, of course, never for me. It was for others. My children, she said, were organizing big events there. Parties, she called them. They were using my house, my home, the place Arthur and I built, as a private party venue. The thought of strangers laughing, dancing, and celebrating in my living room, in my garden, without a thought for me, the rightful owner, was like a knife plunged into my chest. A dull, constant ache that never truly went away. I was alone, truly alone, forgotten in this impersonal apartment they had chosen for me. It was a prison, quiet and well-appointed, but a prison nonetheless. The loneliness was immense. It wasn't just David and Sarah's silence. It was everyone else's too. Other relatives, people I had loved and cared for. Family Arthur and I had shared so many holidays with. My in-laws, my nephews and nieces. They used to visit, used to fill the house with their chatter and their children's squeals. Now they kept silent. Not a call, not a card. They knew what had happened. Everyone knew. They were accomplices in what my children did, though they probably didn't see themselves that way. Perhaps it was for convenience, easier to just go along with David and Sarah. Perhaps it was for fear of upsetting them, of being cut out themselves. But their silence, their turning away, it hurt just as much as David and Sarah's actions. It confirmed my isolation. One afternoon, I saw something that just broke me inside. I rarely looked at social media, but Chloe, my granddaughter, had always been a bright spot. Someone had shared one of her posts, and it popped up on the small tablet I used to keep in touch with the world. There she was, my sweet Chloe, posing happily in my garden. My flowers, my trees, my beautiful blooming garden. She looked so radiant, so full of joy. The photo was of her and her fiancé, and the caption beneath it, in bold, confident letters, read, "Engaged in the most special place in the world, my family's home. My family's home. Not my home. Not grandma's home. Just family's home." It was like they had erased me completely from the narrative of my own life, from the very ground I stood on. That broke me inside, truly shattered something fragile that I thought was gone. The last straw. It always feels like there's one, doesn't it? The final thing that pushes you over the edge, not into despair, but into something harder. I found out the wedding date was set. Chloe's wedding. The one that was announced in my garden. And the ceremony and reception? They would both be at the country home. My refuge. The place that was supposed to be my safe haven, my sanctuary. It would become the stage for the celebration of the very family that had turned their backs on me. They would stand there, under the trees Arthur planted, on the lawn I meticulously cared for, celebrating love and union in the very place where they had destroyed the trust and respect I had for them. It was a cruel mockery, revolt began to grow within me then. Not a noisy, dramatic revolt, not a scream or a cry. It was a silent force, a deep, quiet determination that began to harden, preparing itself to act. I felt it, like a tightening knot in my stomach, a steady beat in my chest. They wanted a show. They wanted a perfect picture for their guests. They wanted to pretend. And it was then, just as that silent force was reaching its peak, that they knocked on my door. David and Sarah. The sound was distinct, familiar. Not an apology, not an embrace. Just a quiet rap, and in their hands, an invitation. They needed my presence to legitimize their charade. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea what was coming. I just looked at David and Sarah, standing there on my doorstep, invitation in hand. All those months of silence, all the pain they'd inflicted, it was all swirling around me. But something was different now. The calm I'd found, the quiet strength I'd cultivated in this small, impersonal apartment, it was all there. I looked at the invitation, then back at their expectant faces. "Of course, I'll attend my granddaughter's wedding," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, almost serene. I saw a flicker of relief, a slight easing in their shoulders. They probably thought I had finally given in, that the old mother had finally accepted her fate. But then I continued, my voice firming just a touch. "But first, I need you to meet me at the country home tomorrow morning. We have to resolve an outstanding issue about the party venue." Their faces showed a hint of confusion, but they quickly agreed. They probably thought I just wanted to talk about a few sentimental things, maybe ask for some small concession, a corner of the garden to call my own again. They saw my calmness as acceptance, not as the quiet before a storm. They had no idea I was about to turn their perfect, planned world completely upside down. The next day, I arrived at the country home. The familiar gravel crunched under my sensible shoes as I walked up the driveway. My heart felt a little pang, seeing my beautiful garden, my house, now clearly being prepared for a big event. Tents were being set up, flowers arranged. It felt like a betrayal all over again. But this time, I wasn't alone. Beside me walked Mr. Thompson, my lawyer. He was an old family friend, a kind man, though I knew he was probably as bewildered by all this as anyone. David and Sarah were already there, waiting on the porch, their faces impatient, a little annoyed that I was holding things up. "Mom, what's so important?" David asked, a hint of exasperation in his voice. "We have so many things to sort out." Sarah nodded in agreement, fiddling with a pen she held in her hand. They were busy people, you see, with important things to do. Their voices, their impatience, just solidified my resolve. We walked into the house, into the living room, and then into the dining room. The very same dining table where they had thrown me out, where they had stripped me of my home and my dignity. That's where I chose to stand. The same table where we'd shared countless meals, celebrated countless birthdays, where Arthur and I had sat and dreamed of our future. I placed the small wooden box, Arthur's box, on the polished wood. It looked so small, so unassuming, but it held the weight of everything. David and Sarah exchanged confused glances, but said nothing. With a slow, deliberate movement, I opened the box. The soft creak of the wood seemed to echo in the room. From inside, I took out two documents. The first, the original deed to the property. The second, my husband Arthur's last will and testament. I held them up, letting them see the official seals, the faded ink. Their eyes widened slightly, a flicker of something new appearing in them. Maybe surprise, maybe a hint of unease. Then, with a voice that felt steady, stronger than I had thought possible, I began to read. I read the clause, the one they had never bothered to learn about, the one they had been too arrogant, too greedy to even consider. Arthur had left the country home entirely to me, not to be divided among the children, not for them to manage. He had left it to me, Eleanor, with a lifelong right to use and complete ownership. It wasn't an inheritance to be split. It was a gift to his wife, a testament to our life together, a promise that this place would always be mine, just as he had always said. I finished reading. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Then I looked up. My eyes, perhaps a little watery, but clear, met David's first, then Sarah's. I saw the arrogance begin to drain from their faces, replaced by a dawning realization, a cold dread. "This place," I said, my voice low, firm, but completely devoid of anger. I looked each of them in the eyes, holding their gaze. "This place is mine, and you are no longer welcome here. The wedding party will not be happening on this property." The shock on their faces was devastating. It was absolute. Their mouths fell open, their eyes wide with disbelief. Arrogance gave way to pure, unadulterated panic. The color drained from their cheeks. They had no plan B, no backup location, no way to explain this to their guests, to Chloe. Their perfect facade, their carefully constructed charade, it was crumbling right before their very eyes. They looked utterly, completely lost. They had thought they had won, that I was a defeated old woman. But the power, the real power, had been with me all along, tucked away in a wooden box. There were no shouts, no arguments from them, just silence. My truth, spoken with the quiet dignity of one who had been humiliated and found the strength to rise again, was enough. The emotional justice was palpable, a current in the air that was almost suffocating. They looked at me, not with anger, but with a terrible, helpless understanding. This was my home, and their dreams for it, their plans, their entire pretense of a happy, united family, had just been shattered. I was the one who held the hammer. In the days that followed that morning in my dining room, after I had spoken my truth with Arthur's will in my hand, silence was their answer. David and Sarah, my children, didn't call. They didn't argue. They just disappeared from my immediate world. It was a stark silence, heavy with unspoken things, but it was also a different kind of quiet than the one in the apartment. This silence, in my own home, felt like a beginning. My granddaughter Chloe's wedding, the one they had planned so grandly for my country home, was postponed. I heard later, through the quiet grapevine of the local market, that it was eventually held in a simple ceremony somewhere else. I wasn't invited. I didn't expect to be. And honestly, a part of me didn't want to be. Not anymore. Not after everything. I returned to my country home. Finally, truly returned. The first few days were strange, though. The house felt big and empty. Not empty of furniture, of course, but empty of the warmth, the feeling of ease. It felt empty because the memories, the ones they had tainted with their greed and their callousness, still lingered like ghosts in the corners. It was my home, yes, but it carried the scars of their betrayal. I walked from room to room, touching the familiar surfaces, the worn wood of the kitchen counter, the faded wallpaper in the living room. It was mine again, but the joy was muted by the echo of what had been lost. But little by little, I began to fill the space with my own peace. I started with the garden. It had been somewhat neglected, just enough to show that hired hands didn't have the same love for it that I did. I resumed caring for it, getting my hands back in the soil, feeling the earth, the cool dampness, the rough texture of the leaves. I planted new flowers, bursts of color that weren't there before, symbolizing a fresh start, and I nurtured my vegetables, letting them grow plump and sweet under my care. It felt good, the work. It was honest. Soon I started selling my fresh vegetables and my homemade preserves at the local market again, just like I used to do years ago. It wasn't about the money. It was about connection, about purpose. I met new people there, people who didn't know the whole story, who just saw Eleanor, the lady with the beautiful tomatoes and the delicious strawberry jam. They valued me for who I am, not for what I have or what they thought I should be. I made new friends, simple, kind people who appreciated a good conversation and a laugh. The country home, my safe haven, truly became a home again. But it was a different kind of home now. It was my refuge, my kingdom. The pain of the betrayal, the deep cut they had left in my heart, it didn't disappear overnight. Some days it still ached, a phantom limb of sorrow. But it no longer controlled me. It didn't define me. I was free. Then one day, quite unexpectedly, my granddaughter Chloe appeared at my gate, alone. She walked up the path, hesitant, and stood there, looking so small against the backdrop of my big house. She looked at me, and her eyes were full of tears. She asked for forgiveness. Her voice was shaky as she said she didn't know the whole story, not really. She said she was ashamed of her parents' actions. My heart, which had been so guarded, softened. I walked to her, to my sweet Chloe, and I hugged her. I held her close, feeling her slight trembling. Forgiveness, I knew, doesn't mean forgetting. The past had happened, but I saw genuine regret in her eyes, a true understanding of the hurt. We began to reconnect, little by little, slowly, building a new relationship, one based on respect and honesty, not on the broken family history. As for my children, David and Sarah, they never contacted me again after that day in the dining room. Not a call, not a letter, not a single word. And I found peace in that distance. It was the space I needed, the quiet I deserved. My life became simpler, yes, without the drama, without the constant pretense. But it was infinitely richer, for it finally, truly belonged only to me. I look at my garden today, the way the sunlight catches the dew on the leaves, the quiet buzz of the bees, and I see how life truly is. It's funny, isn't it? You spend your whole life tending to things, to people, to places, and sometimes you miss the most obvious lessons staring you right in the face. Here, in my garden, I see it so clearly now. Sometimes you need to prune the dry branches. You have to cut away what's dead, what's no longer serving the plant, so that the plant itself can grow strong again, so it can breathe, truly flourish. If you don't, I would always be valued. But what I learned, in the coldest, most painful way, was that sometimes the very people you poured your life into, the ones you helped flourish the most, they can see you as nothing more than an obstacle, an old, inconvenient piece of furniture, a thing to be moved, a problem to be solved. And in that moment, you realize your worth was never tied to their perception. It was always inside you. Always. My story, the one I'm telling you now, it was one of immense pain. Yes, a pain so deep it sometimes felt like my heart would simply crack. The betrayal, the humiliation, the loneliness of being cast aside by my own flesh and blood. That was real. That was my truth. But it was also a story of rediscovery, a quiet, determined uncovering of who Eleanor truly was beneath all the roles I'd played: wife, mother, grandmother, caregiver. I rediscovered my own strength, my own voice, my own boundaries. I found that I could stand alone, that I could heal, that I could bloom again, even after being cut down so cruelly. This garden, this home, it's not just bricks and soil now. It's a testament, a living, breathing proof that you can always find your way back to yourself, that you can reclaim your space, your dignity, your very essence, even when others try to strip it all away. It made me think, really think, about how we treat each other, especially how we treat the elderly. There's this quiet way that society, and sometimes even our own families, can make you feel invisible as you age, as if your worth diminishes with your years, with your ability to produce, to work, to keep up, as if your wisdom, your experience, your very presence becomes a burden rather than a treasure. We spend a lifetime accumulating knowledge, memories, love, and then too often we're just shunted aside, expected to be quiet, expected to be grateful for whatever small corner we're given, expected to just disappear. But every single person, no matter their age, deserves respect, deserves to be seen, deserves to be heard, deserves to live with dignity, to make their own choices, to be valued for the unique human being they are, not for what they possess or what they can still do for others. It's a fundamental right of simply being alive. And today I ask you, what about you? Have you ever felt invisible to the very people you helped flourish the most? Have you ever given so much of yourself, your time, your energy, your love, only to feel like you slowly faded into the background for those closest to you? Like your voice became a whisper they no longer strained to hear. Like your presence became just expected, without truly being appreciated. It's a strange, heartbreaking feeling, isn't it? To watch others thrive because of your efforts, and then to feel your own light dim in their eyes. It's something I had to confront, face head on, in the quiet solitude of this house after I reclaimed it. It's a hard lesson, but an important one. Knowing your worth, independent of what others decide for you, is everything. And sometimes you have to be the one to remind them. Or, more importantly, to remind yourself, this isn't the end of my story, not yet, but it's a vital part of what I've learned about living, truly living on my own terms. It's a strange, heartbreaking feeling, isn't it? To watch others thrive because of your efforts, and then to feel your own light dim in their eyes. Like your voice became a whisper they no longer strained to hear. Like your presence became just expected, without truly being appreciated. It's something I had to confront, face head on in the quiet solitude of this house after I reclaimed it. It's a hard lesson, but an important one. Knowing your worth, independent of what others decide for you, is everything. And sometimes you have to be the one to remind them. Or, more importantly, to remind yourself, this isn't the end of my story, not yet. But it's a vital part of what I've learned about living, truly living, on my own terms. I walk through my garden now, early in the morning, when the dew is still on the leaves and the sun is just painting the sky with soft colors. I breathe in the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. The quiet is different here. It's not the deafening silence of the apartment, the one that pressed in on me like a heavy blanket. No, this quiet is full of life. It's the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant chirp of a bird, the gentle hum of the bees waking up with the sun. It's the sound of peace, my peace. My hands, once full of frantic work and endless giving, are now full of gentle tending. Tending to my rose bushes, to my flourishing vegetable patch, to the small pleasures that fill my days. My routine is simple, unhurried. I wake with the sun, make myself a cup of tea, and sit on my porch, watching the world awaken. I spend hours in the garden, losing myself in the rhythm of nature. I read, I knit, I bake, sometimes for myself, sometimes for the new friends I've made at the market. They don't know all the details of my past, not really, and they don't need to. They just see Eleanor, a woman who loves her garden and makes a mean apple pie. And that's enough. More than enough. I've found my dignity again, not through shouting or fighting, but through quiet strength, through the simple act of reclaiming what was mine, and then, more importantly, reclaiming myself. The relief is immense, a deep, sighing exhale that has been building for years. I am no longer defined by what was taken from me, but by what I've rebuilt. My home is no longer a battleground. It's a sanctuary. And I am no longer just a mother, a grandmother, a wife. I am Eleanor, whole, complete. The path ahead of me stretches out, not with the uncertainty of before, but with a gentle calm. I am not lonely anymore. Chloe visits often now, her laughter a sweet melody in the house. We talk for hours, sharing stories, building new memories that are free of the shadows of the past. Her genuine love and remorse have healed a part of me I thought was broken beyond repair. My children, David and Sarah, remain distant, and that's all right. It's a space that allows me to breathe, to truly live without the constant weight of their expectations or their judgment. The quiet between us is no longer a wound, but a necessary boundary. You know, after all this, after finding my voice and my peace, I realized how much it means to share these real, raw parts of life. It connects us, doesn't it? Knowing you're not alone, that someone else has felt something similar. It brings a kind of comfort, a quiet strength, just knowing we're not navigating these challenging waters by ourselves. I found so much peace in sharing my truth, and I hope it helps you too. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this one, pay attention. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without notice. Confirm if you're still subscribed to the channel and activate the bell. It's important to me that these stories, these whispers of truth, can still reach you. Because knowing you're out there, listening, it means the world. It means we're still connected, sharing life, sharing strength. And that, dear friend, that's a beautiful thing.